Imagine waking up one morning to discover that your entire species has been classified as a galactic threat. Not because you conquered worlds or enslaved civilizations, but because you did something far more terrifying to the cosmic community. You refused to stay down when the universe tried to crush you. Across the galaxy, there are species that can bend steel with their minds, races that swim through the vacuum of space as easily as water, and civilizations that have mastered the very fabric of reality itself. Yet none of them sleep soundly knowing that somewhere in a small corner of the Milky Way, on a modest blue-green planet, lives a species so unpredictably resilient that they've turned stubbornness into an art form. You see, humans have a peculiar habit. When faced with impossible odds, when logic dictates surrender, when every rational being would accept defeat, humans do the most irrational thing imaginable. They get creative. They get angry. And, most terrifyingly of all, they get determined. The Galactic Council thought they understood warfare. They thought they knew what made a species dangerous. They were about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous enemy isn't the one with the biggest weapons or the strongest armor, it's the one that simply refuses to acknowledge that they're supposed to lose. This is the story of how humanity accidentally became the galaxy's most feared species, not through conquest or cruelty, but through something far more unsettling to the cosmic order: the absolute refusal to give up, no matter how impossible the situation becomes. Welcome to the war nobody wanted, started by the species nobody expected, in ways nobody could have predicted. Captain Sarah Chen had always believed that first contact would involve more ceremony and less gunfire. Instead, she found herself crouched behind the twisted wreckage of what had been the UES Prometheus's communication array, watching as purple energy bolts turned the surrounding hull plating into molten slag. 3 days ago, humanity had achieved its greatest triumph: successful faster-than-light travel. The Prometheus had been humanity's ambassador to the stars, carrying the hopes of 8 billion people and a cargo hold full of cultural artifacts meant to introduce Earth to whatever civilizations might exist among the stars. The ship's manifest included everything from Shakespeare's collected works to samples of chocolate, from classical music recordings to children's drawings of what aliens might look like. Now, as Chen pressed herself against the superheated metal and listened to the alien voices chattering in frequencies that made her teeth ache, she wondered if maybe they should have packed more ammunition and fewer poetry books. The attack had come without warning. The Prometheus had dropped out of FTL, and what their sensors indicated was an empty system: 3 gas giants, a handful of rocky worlds, and a sun that burned a comfortable yellow-white. It should have been perfect for humanity's first tentative steps into interstellar space. Instead, within minutes of their arrival, ships had materialized around them like angry hornets disturbed from their nest. The aliens, and Chen still couldn't quite believe she was thinking that phrase in anything other than a science fiction context, had opened fire immediately. No attempt at communication, no warning shots, no dramatic ultimatum delivered in broken English. Just pure, efficient destruction aimed at crippling the human vessel. Chen's tactical training kicked in as she assessed their situation. The Prometheus was an exploration vessel, not a warship. It carried defensive systems and a small complement of Marines, but it had been designed for discovery, not combat. Against an unknown number of technologically superior attackers, their chances ranged from slim to non-existent. Which was why it came as a complete surprise when humanity's response to first contact was not surrender, but the largest engineering project in human history accomplished in under 72 hours. The change had started with Dr. Marcus Webb, the mission's chief engineer, who had taken one look at the alien weapons tearing through their hull and declared, "Well, that's just insulting." While normal people might have focused on the fact that they were being systematically destroyed by beings from another world, Webb had become personally offended by the aliens' apparent assumption that humans would simply roll over and die quietly. Within 6 hours of the initial attack, Webb had jury-rigged their damaged sensors into a makeshift communication array powerful enough to punch a signal back to Earth. The message had been brief and, to the point: under attack by hostile aliens. Request immediate assistance. P.S. They're using energy weapons that somehow violate the second law of thermodynamics. Please send physicists and bigger guns. On Earth, the response had been immediate and typically human. Rather than panic or despair, humanity had rolled up its sleeves and gotten to work. The Global Emergency Coalition had been formed within hours, uniting every nation on Earth under a single directive: get help to the Prometheus and show these aliens that humans didn't appreciate being shot at. What followed was a display of human cooperation and ingenuity that would have been inspiring if it hadn't been born out of pure spite. Every space agency, military organization, and research institution on the planet had contributed to what historians would later call the 72-hour miracle. Using humanity's entire arsenal of nuclear weapons as fuel, teams of engineers and physicists worked around the clock to construct and launch humanity's answer to interstellar warfare. Chen had watched through the Prometheus's battered sensors as Earth's response had arrived in the system. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't sophisticated. It was, however, undeniably human in its complete disregard for conventional wisdom and safety regulations. The UES Retribution looked like it had been assembled by drunk welders working in the dark during an earthquake. Which wasn't far from the truth. The ship had been built from components of decommissioned space stations, experimental military prototypes, and at least 3 different space elevators that various countries had contributed to the cause. It was held together with emergency welds, determination, and what appeared to be an alarming amount of duct tape. What made it beautiful, in a uniquely human way, was that it worked. The Retribution had dropped out of FTL like a mechanical angel of death, its improvised hull bristling with weapons that ranged from railguns the size of city blocks to devices that Chen suspected had been adapted from industrial mining equipment. The ship's communication system had crackled to life with a message delivered in what Chen recognized as Admiral Harrison's gravelly voice: "This is the United Earthship Retribution to unknown hostile forces. You have fired upon a peaceful human vessel. This was a mistake." The alien response had been swift and predictable, a concentrated barrage of energy weapons that should have reduced the human reinforcement to scattered atoms. Instead, the Retribution had done something that violated every tactical manual Chen had ever read. It had tanked the entire attack and kept flying. The secret, as Webb had later explained with the manic enthusiasm of an engineer who had just seen the laws of physics bend to human stubbornness, was that humanity had solved the problem of alien energy weapons through the simple expedient of not caring about efficiency, elegance, or common sense. The Retribution's hull was 3 meters of ablative armor wrapped around redundant force field generators powered by a reactor that was technically classified as a controlled nuclear explosion. It was the spacefaring equivalent of showing up to a knife fight wearing a full suit of medieval plate armor while riding a tank. The aliens had seemed genuinely confused by this development. Their energy weapons, which had been designed to efficiently disable enemy vessels through precise application of force, were about as effective against the Retribution as harsh language. Meanwhile, humanity's response to this technological disparity was to start shooting back with weapons that operated on the principle that if you hit something hard enough with a big enough piece of metal traveling at a significant fraction of the speed of light, the details of their advanced shielding technology became largely academic. Chen had watched in amazement as the first alien vessel simply vanished under a barrage of relativistic projectiles. Not destroyed in a dramatic explosion, just gone, converted to its component atoms by kinetic energy that no reasonable civilization would ever consider mounting on a spacecraft. That was when the aliens had made their first attempt at communication. The message had come through in a dozen different frequencies simultaneously, eventually resolving into something that the Prometheus's computers could translate. The voice that emerged from the speakers had a musical quality that might have been beautiful under different circumstances, but was somewhat undermined by the obvious panic in the alien's tone. "Unknown species, please identify yourselves and state your intentions. This system is claimed territory of the hegemony. Your presence here constitutes an act of aggression against the Galactic Council's established borders." Admiral Harrison's response had been characteristically blunt. "This is Admiral Harrison of the United Earth Fleet. You fired on our ship first, buddy. That makes this self-defense. Now, would you like to explain why you're shooting at peaceful explorers, or should we continue this conversation with high-velocity projectiles?" What followed was humanity's first diplomatic contact with an alien civilization, conducted while both sides continued trying to kill each other. It was, Chen reflected, probably the most human way possible to begin interstellar relations. The alien, who had eventually identified himself as Fleet Commander Zephyr of the Hegemony Border Defense Force, had seemed genuinely baffled by the human approach to space combat. His species, the Vector, had apparently mastered energy manipulation to the point where their weapons could disrupt molecular bonds at the quantum level. It was sophisticated, efficient, and completely useless against an enemy that had solved the problem by wrapping their ships in enough armor to stop a small moon. Your vessels violate every principle of spacecraft design, Zephyr had transmitted, his musical voice taking on an almost plaintive quality. They are massive, inefficient, and consume resources at a rate that should make interstellar travel economically impossible. How do you power such monstrosities? Harrison's laugh had echoed across the communication channel. Kid, you're talking to a species that figured out how to split atoms because we were bored one afternoon. We don't do economically impossible. The conversation had continued in this vein for several hours, with both sides attempting to understand each other while maintaining what military historians would later describe as aggressive defensive positions. Chen had found herself fascinated by the cultural exchange occurring between salvos of weapons fire. The Vector, it emerged, were representatives of something called the Galactic Council, a confederation of 47 different species that had been exploring and colonizing space for thousands of years. They had established protocols for everything from trade agreements to territorial disputes, and their approach to warfare was highly ritualized and efficient. Humans, on the other hand, had been in space for less than a century and had approached the problem of interstellar combat with the same methodology they applied to everything else: figure out what the opposition expected, then do something completely different while hitting them with the largest possible stick. The tactical situation had stabilized into what Chen could only describe as a violent standoff. The human ships were too heavily armored for Vector weapons to penetrate quickly, while the aliens were too fast and maneuverable for human weapons to target effectively. It was like watching a heavyweight boxer fight a hummingbird. Both sides could hurt each other, but neither could land a decisive blow. That was when Commander Chen had made the suggestion that would change everything. Admiral, she had transmitted to the Retribution, what if we try talking to them without shooting? I know it's a radical concept for humanity, but we might learn something useful. Harrison's response had been immediate. Chen, these aliens shot at us first. That's not very neighborly behavior. Sir, with respect, maybe they had reasons. We did drop out of FTL in their space without announcing ourselves. From their perspective, we might look like an invasion force. There had been a long pause before Harrison had responded. All right, Chen. You've got my attention. What exactly are you proposing? What Chen had proposed was the first formal ceasefire in human-alien relations, negotiated through a combination of tactical positioning and what she later described as aggressively friendly diplomacy. Both sides would maintain their current positions, but weapons would be powered down and actual communication would begin. Fleet Commander Zephyr had agreed to the ceasefire with what Chen suspected was considerable relief. The Vector had apparently never encountered a species that responded to superior technology by simply ignoring its advantages through brute force engineering. Over the next several hours, Chen had found herself serving as humanity's first xenolinguist, translator, and interstellar diplomat. The process had been educational for both sides, though she suspected the aliens were learning more than they had bargained for about human psychology. The Vector were, she learned, an ancient species that had achieved spaceflight when humanity was still figuring out agriculture. They were energy beings of a sort not quite incorporeal, but existing in a state that was more electromagnetic field than solid matter. Their technology was based on manipulating the fundamental forces of the universe, which explained why their weapons were so elegant and their approach to engineering so efficient. They were also, Chen gradually realized, somewhat sheltered in their outlook on galactic affairs. The Galactic Council, Zephyr explained, was a carefully balanced confederation where each species contributed according to their strengths and specializations. The Vector served as border guards and system monitors. The crystalline Zorhai were master builders and architects. The gaseous Nelthara were living computers and data processors. Each species had found their niche and stayed within it, creating a stable, peaceful galactic civilization. It's a beautiful system, Chen had acknowledged during one of their translated conversations. Very organized. Very efficient. Indeed, Zephyr had replied. For 3,000 years, this arrangement has prevented major conflicts and allowed all species to prosper according to their nature. That's wonderful. Just out of curiosity, what happens when you encounter a species that doesn't fit into any of your existing categories? There had been a pause before Zephyr had responded. That has never occurred. All intelligent species develop according to predictable patterns. There are energy manipulators like ourselves, matter shapers like the Zorhai, information processors like the Nelthara, or various combinations thereof. Every species finds their role. Chen had looked around at the battle-scarred hull of the Prometheus, at the impossible bulk of the Retribution hanging in space like a weaponized scrapyard, and at the tactical display showing alien ships that were beautiful, efficient, and completely incapable of dealing with humanity's aggressive indifference to conventional wisdom. "Fleet Commander Zephyr," she had said carefully, "I think you're about to encounter your first exception." That conversation had taken place 18 hours ago. Since then, the situation had evolved in ways that Chen suspected nobody, human or alien, had anticipated. The ceasefire had held, but communications with the Galactic Council had revealed a problem that was rapidly escalating beyond a simple border misunderstanding. Humanity, it seemed, didn't fit into any of the Council's existing categories for intelligent life. They weren't energy manipulators, matter shapers, or information processors. They were, in the words of one Council xenobiologist, generalist omnivores with delusions of engineering competence. This had prompted what Chen gathered was an urgent session of the Galactic Council's ruling body, with representatives from all 47 member species attempting to figure out what to do about the humans. The problem was that humanity's approach to technology, warfare, and space travel violated so many established principles that the Council wasn't sure if they were dealing with a new species or some kind of galactic anomaly. Chen had been monitoring the translated Council communications with growing unease. The debate seemed to be centering on whether humans represented an opportunity for expansion of galactic civilization or a fundamental threat to the established order. "Their technology is primitive but inexplicably effective," one Council member had noted. "They appear to have achieved faster-than-light travel through what can only be described as controlled explosions and applied stubbornness. Their military doctrine violates every principle of efficient warfare," another had added. "They respond to superior technology by simply ignoring its advantages. This suggests either profound ignorance or disturbing tactical flexibility. Most concerning," a third voice had contributed, "is their apparent rejection of specialization. Human individuals display competence across multiple disciplines. Their social structure suggests they expect every member of their species to be capable of adaptation to new circumstances. This could represent a fundamental challenge to the specialized nature of galactic civilization." It was the last comment that had made Chen realize the true scope of the problem they were facing. The Galactic Council wasn't just trying to figure out how to deal with one new species, they were confronting the possibility that humanity represented a completely different approach to intelligence, technology, and civilization itself. The current standoff was stable, but Chen knew it couldn't last. Either the Council would decide that humans could be integrated into their existing structure, or they would conclude that humanity represented too great a disruption to the galactic order to be allowed to continue expanding into space. She was beginning to suspect which way that decision would go. As if summoned by her thoughts, the communication system crackled to life with an incoming transmission from the Council fleet. Zephyr's musical voice carried a note of formality that hadn't been present in their earlier conversations. "Human vessels, this is Fleet Commander Zephyr speaking on behalf of the Galactic Council. We have completed our deliberations regarding your species and your presence in Council space." Chen felt her stomach tighten. "We're listening, Commander. The Council has determined that your species represents a fundamental incompatibility with established galactic civilization. Your technological approach, social structure, and military doctrine all suggest that peaceful coexistence between humans and Council species would be impossible in the long term." "Commander," Chen said carefully, "are you saying that the Council has decided we can't be allowed to continue exploring space?" "I am saying," Zephyr replied, his voice carrying what sounded like genuine regret, "that the Council has voted to classify your species as a Category 7 existential threat to galactic stability. As of this moment, humanity is officially considered an enemy of the Galactic Council. You have 72 hours to return to your home system and remain there permanently, or face the full military response of 47 allied species." Chen stared at the communication panel in disbelief. In the span of less than a week, humanity had gone from taking its first steps into the galaxy to being declared an enemy of galactic civilization. "Commander Zephyr," she said finally, "you do realize that you've just declared war on a species whose response to being shot at was to build a warship out of scrap metal and nuclear weapons in under 3 days?" There was a pause before Zephyr responded. The Council is confident that 47 allied species can contain one primitive civilization, regardless of their unconventional approach to engineering. Chen looked out at the stars, thinking about 8 billion humans who were probably just learning about the existence of aliens, and wondering how they would react to the news that those aliens had decided humanity was too dangerous to be allowed in space. She suspected the Galactic Council was about to get a very educational lesson in exactly why they were right to be worried about humans. "Commander," she said, "I hope you're prepared for what comes next. Because if there's one thing humans don't do well, it's being told what we're not allowed to do." As the transmission ended and the alien ships began moving into more aggressive formations, Chen began composing her report to Earth. She had a feeling that the next phase of human space exploration was going to involve significantly more explosions and considerably fewer cultural exchange programs. The galaxy's most dangerous species was about to show the Galactic Council exactly what made them dangerous in the first place. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had been working on sustainable energy solutions in her laboratory at MIT when the world changed forever. The first reports of alien contact had been dismissed as hoaxes, then confirmed as the most significant event in human history, and, finally, revealed to be the prelude to humanity's first interstellar war, all within the span of a single afternoon. Now, 3 days after the Galactic Council's ultimatum, she found herself standing in what had once been the United Nations General Assembly Hall, surrounded by the most brilliant minds from every corner of Earth. The hall had been hastily converted into a command center for what the emergency government was calling Project Defiance, humanity's response to being told they weren't allowed to play with the other kids in the cosmic sandbox. The irony wasn't lost on her that the species known for its inability to agree on anything had achieved unprecedented unity in less than 72 hours. Apparently, all humanity had needed to set aside thousands of years of petty squabbles was for someone else to tell them they couldn't have something. "Ladies and gentlemen," announced Secretary General Chen Wei from the podium, her voice carrying across the packed assembly hall, "we face a choice that will define our species for generations to come. We can accept the Galactic Council's ultimatum and confine ourselves to our solar system permanently, or we can remind the galaxy that humans have never been particularly good at following rules they didn't help write." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of Earth's brightest minds, representing every nation, culture, and scientific discipline, rose to their feet in a standing ovation that lasted nearly 5 minutes. Rodriguez had never seen anything like it, physicists from CERN standing shoulder to shoulder with weapons engineers from classified government programs, biologists from the Amazon research stations applauding alongside computer scientists from Silicon Valley. "I take it that's a vote for option B," Chen Wei continued with the first smile Rodriguez had seen from her since the crisis began. "Very well. Project Defiance is officially authorized. Dr. Rodriguez, if you would please take the stage?" Rodriguez made her way to the podium, still somewhat amazed that her theoretical work on zero-point energy extraction had somehow made her the lead coordinator for humanity's war effort. 3 days ago, her biggest concern had been securing funding for her next research grant. Now she was responsible for organizing the largest scientific and engineering project in human history. "Thank you, Secretary General," she began, looking out at the assembled crowd. "Before we begin, I want everyone to understand exactly what we're up against. The Galactic Council represents 47 different species, some of which have been spacefaring for thousands of years. They have technology that makes our most advanced systems look like stone tools. They can manipulate energy at the quantum level, reshape matter at the molecular level, and process information in ways that our computers can barely comprehend." The hall had gone completely silent, and Rodriguez could see the weight of the challenge settling on everyone's shoulders. "They are, by any rational measure, superior to us in every way that matters for interstellar warfare," she continued. "Which is why we're not going to fight them rationally." The silence broke into confused murmurs, and Rodriguez held up her hand for quiet. "The Council made a critical error in their analysis of human capabilities. They looked at our technology and saw primitive engineering held together by stubborn refusal to acknowledge physical limitations. They looked at our military doctrine and saw chaotic violence applied without regard for efficiency or elegance. They looked at our social structure and saw dangerous unpredictability." Rodriguez paused, letting the tension build. "They were absolutely correct on all counts. And that's exactly why we're going to win. The murmur grew louder, and Rodriguez could see excitement beginning to replace uncertainty in the faces before her. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to demonstrate something that the galaxy hasn't seen in 3,000 years of peaceful, orderly civilization. We're going to show them what happens when intelligence refuses to be civilized. Over the next 6 hours, Rodriguez oversaw the most remarkable display of human coordination she had ever witnessed. The assembled scientists, engineers, and military strategists didn't just cooperate, they evolved into something approaching a hive mind focused on a single goal, making the Galactic Council regret their ultimatum. The first breakthrough came from Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a materials scientist from Tokyo who had been working on self-repairing hull composites for deep space exploration. Within 2 hours of examining the sensor data from the alien weapons, she had developed a theoretical framework for armor that would actually become stronger when subjected to energy weapon fire. The alien weapons work by disrupting molecular bonds, she explained to the rapidly forming engineering committee. But, if we design materials with intentionally unstable bond structures that realign into stronger configurations when disrupted. You're talking about hull plating that gets tougher the more they shoot at it, interrupted General Morrison, the Joint Chiefs representative to the project. How fast can you build it? With full industrial support? 6 days for a prototype, maybe 12 for full production. Do it. Next. Dr. James Park, a quantum physicist from Seoul, had been examining the alien FTL signatures and had reached conclusions that would have been considered science fiction a week earlier. Their faster-than-light travel works by manipulating spacetime curvature at the quantum level, he reported. It's incredibly elegant and efficient. It's also completely predictable. They follow mathematical laws that determine exactly when and where they can enter or exit FTL. You're saying we can predict their movements? Asked Admiral Sarah Hayes, who had been promoted to head of naval operations when Admiral Harrison volunteered to take the first human battle fleet into alien space. Better than that. I'm saying we can build FTL interdiction fields that will trap them in normal space, and FTL redirect systems that will send their ships wherever we want them to go instead of where they're trying to go. Rodriguez watched the strategic implications dawn on the military representatives. If humans could control when and where alien ships could use FTL, they could turn the galaxy's transportation network into the world's largest tactical advantage. How long? Hayes asked. The math is complex, but the engineering is straightforward. 2 weeks for a working prototype. Approved. What else? The breakthroughs kept coming. Dr. Maria Santos from Sao Paulo had figured out how to weaponize humanity's approach to industrial production. Instead of building a few sophisticated warships, she proposed constructing thousands of simple vessels that could be manufactured using modified civilian infrastructure. The aliens are used to quality over quantity, she explained. They build perfect ships designed to last for centuries. We build good enough ships designed to accomplish one mission and be replaced by 10 more just like them. Dr. Abdul Hassan from Cairo had been working on the communication problem and had discovered something that made Rodriguez's head hurt just thinking about it. Human quantum communication systems, it turned out, operated on completely different principles than anything the Galactic Council had encountered. Their communication relies on manipulating quantum entanglement in predictable ways, Hassan reported. Our systems work by, well, honestly, I'm not entirely sure how our systems work. The theoretical foundation violates several basic principles of quantum mechanics. But they're completely immune to alien communication jamming, and they seem to be able to interfere with alien communications in ways that shouldn't be possible. You're saying our communications are so screwed up that the aliens can't figure out how to jam them? General Morrison asked. I'm saying our communications are so fundamentally wrong that they're accidentally right in ways that make alien technology incompatible with basic physics when we're around. Rodriguez had to suppress a laugh. Leave it to humans to solve the problem of superior alien technology by being so bad at engineering that they accidentally broke the rules of the universe. The most significant breakthrough, however, came from an unexpected source. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a xenobiologist who had been hastily reassigned from studying extremophile bacteria to analyzing alien communication intercepts, had made a discovery that changed everything. I've been examining the psychological profiles we can extract from alien communications, she announced to the assembled committee. And I think I figured out why they're so afraid of us." The hall went quiet, waiting for her explanation. The Galactic Council represents 3,000 years of stable, specialized civilization. Every species has found their niche and stayed within it. They've created a perfectly balanced ecosystem where conflict is rare and changes are incremental. They've eliminated the evolutionary pressures that drive adaptation and innovation. Rodriguez could see where this was heading, and the implications were staggering. "They're not just technologically advanced," Walsh continued. "They're evolutionarily stagnant. They haven't had to adapt to new challenges or develop new capabilities for millennia. Their specialization makes them incredibly effective within their defined roles, but completely inflexible when facing something outside their experience." "You're saying they've forgotten how to change," Rodriguez said. "I'm saying they've never had to learn. Humans, on the other hand, are the product of a planet that spent 4 billion years trying to kill everything that lived on it. We've been adapting to impossible challenges since before we climbed out of the oceans. When faced with a problem, our first instinct isn't to find the most efficient solution, it's to find any solution that works, then improve it through iteration and controlled chaos." The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't just facing technologically superior opponents, they were facing opponents who had traded adaptability for perfection, innovation for stability. "Ladies and gentlemen," Rodriguez announced, "I believe we've just identified the enemy's fundamental weakness. They've optimized themselves for a static universe. Unfortunately for them, they've just introduced the most aggressively dynamic species in the galaxy to their perfect little ecosystem." Over the following days, Project Defiance evolved from an emergency response to humanity's first comprehensive strategy for interstellar warfare. The plan that emerged was so audacious, so completely contrary to everything the Galactic Council expected from space combat, that Rodriguez suspected it might actually work. Phase 1 involved what Dr. Santos had dubbed the swarm strategy. Instead of building a small number of sophisticated warships to match alien technology, humanity would construct thousands of simple, disposable vessels using converted civilian infrastructure. Factories that had been producing cars would start turning out single-use combat spacecraft. Shipyards that built cargo vessels would begin producing what amounted to piloted missiles with FTL capability. The ships would be crewed, short-ranged, and completely expendable. They would also be produced at a rate that would overwhelm any conceivable defense. For every alien warship, humanity would deploy 100 human vessels. For every alien battle fleet, humanity would send 1,000 expendable fighters. Phase 2 centered on Dr. Park's FTL manipulation technology. Humanity would establish interdiction zones throughout the galaxy, trapping alien fleets in normal space where human numerical superiority could be brought to bear. Simultaneously, redirect systems would turn the galaxy's FTL network against itself, sending alien reinforcements to empty systems while human forces struck at undefended targets. Phase 3 was Dr. Tanaka's adaptive armor technology, which would render alien energy weapons not just ineffective, but actually counterproductive. The more the aliens shot at human ships, the tougher those ships would become. It was the engineering equivalent of making every enemy attack strengthen your defenses. Phase 4 involved what Dr. Hassan had called communication chaos. Human quantum communication systems would be deployed throughout alien space, creating interference patterns that would disrupt alien coordination while leaving human forces unaffected. The galaxy's perfect communication network would become a liability when faced with technology that operated on principles so wrong they were accidentally superior. But it was Phase 5 that Rodriguez thought would truly terrify the Galactic Council. Dr. Walsh's analysis had suggested that humanity's greatest advantage wasn't their technology or their tactics, it was their adaptability. Phase 5 was designed to ensure that advantage was maintained by constantly evolving human capabilities throughout the conflict. Every engagement with alien forces would be treated as a learning opportunity. Human ships would be equipped with advanced sensors and data collection systems designed to analyze alien technology and tactics. That information would be immediately transmitted back to Earth, where teams of engineers would work around the clock to develop counters, improvements, and entirely new approaches to space warfare. The Galactic Council had spent 3,000 years perfecting their approach to interstellar conflict. Humanity would spend the next 3 years learning, adapting, and evolving faster than any civilization in galactic history. The aliens think this is going to be a war, Rodriguez announced to the final planning session. They're expecting us to deploy our forces, engage in combat, and either win or lose according to established principles of military science. She looked around the room at the tired but determined faces of Earth's finest minds. Instead, we're going to show them what happens when warfare becomes an evolutionary pressure. They wanted to know why we're dangerous. We're dangerous because we never stop getting more dangerous. The final vote to approve Project Defiance was unanimous. Within hours, every major industrial center on Earth had received new production orders. Every military academy had updated their curriculum to include adaptive interstellar warfare. Every research institution had been tasked with developing technologies that didn't exist yet but would be needed within months. Rodriguez stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed orbital command station, watching as Earth's orbital space transformed into the largest military-industrial complex in human history. Shipyards were being constructed in the Lagrange points. Asteroid mining operations were being established to provide raw materials. The moon was being converted into one enormous weapons factory. Humanity had received its ultimatum from the Galactic Council 3 weeks ago. The deadline for withdrawal from space was in 4 days. Instead of withdrawing, humanity was preparing to launch the largest military expedition in galactic history. 1,000 ships would depart for alien space in 72 hours, carrying weapons, tactics, and technologies that no civilization had ever seen before. Rodriguez's personal communication device chimed with an incoming message from Admiral Hayes aboard the UES Retribution, which had been refitted and upgraded into the flagship of humanity's first battle fleet. Dr. Rodriguez, Hayes's voice crackled over the quantum communication link, "We're ready to depart on your word." "Are you sure about this plan?" Rodriguez looked out at the stars, thinking about 8 billion humans who had spent the last 3 weeks proving that being told something was impossible was the fastest way to make them figure out how to do it anyway. "Admiral," she replied, "I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Show the galaxy what humans do when someone tries to tell us where we're not allowed to go." As the transmission ended, Rodriguez began composing the message that would be broadcast throughout human space and, if Dr. Hassan's theories were correct, intercepted by every alien communication system in the galaxy. "This is Dr. Elena Rodriguez of the United Earth Defense Initiative, speaking to the Galactic Council and all member species. You have declared humanity a threat to galactic civilization and demanded our withdrawal from interstellar space. We have considered your ultimatum and reached our decision." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "We decline your offer. Furthermore, we formally reject your authority to determine where humans may or may not travel, what technologies we may or may not develop, and what role we will play in galactic affairs. If you wish to enforce your ultimatum, you are welcome to try." Rodriguez took a breath, preparing to deliver humanity's declaration of war in terms that every species in the galaxy would understand. "You have classified us as a Category 7 existential threat. We accept that designation and promise to live up to it. You wanted to know what makes humans dangerous? You're about to find out." As the message transmitted across the galaxy, Rodriguez wondered if the aliens had any idea what they had just unleashed. The Galactic Council had made their intentions clear: they wanted humanity contained or eliminated. What they were about to get instead was 8 billion humans who had just been told they couldn't have something, backed by the most aggressively innovative civilization in the galaxy and armed with weapons that violated every principle of civilized warfare. Rodriguez suspected that in a few months, the aliens would be desperately wishing they had tried diplomacy instead. Commander Marcus Webb had expected his first command in interstellar space to involve more glory and less improvised welding. Instead, he found himself floating in the zero-gravity maintenance bay of the UES Defiance, trying to convince a jury-rigged plasma cannon to cooperate with a targeting system that had been designed for asteroid mining operations. The Defiance was typical of humanity's new approach to space warfare, a ship built in 16 days using parts from 3 different decommissioned space stations, powered by a reactor that had been salvaged from a deep space mining platform, and armed with weapons that no rational military engineer would have approved for field deployment. It was ugly, inefficient, and held together by what Webb privately suspected was mostly stubbornness and prayer. It was also absolutely lethal in ways that the Galactic Council had never encountered before. Webb's flotilla consisted of 47 ships exactly like the Defiance, converted civilian vessels that had been hastily armed and armored according to the new adaptive warfare protocols developed by Project Defiance. Each ship carried a crew of 20 humans who had been training for exactly 3 weeks in tactics that hadn't existed a month ago. They were about to engage in humanity's first offensive military action against an alien civilization, and Webb was reasonably certain that nobody on either side had any idea what was about to happen. "Commander," called out Lieutenant Sarah Park from the navigation station, "we're receiving the all-clear signal from Admiral Hayes. The interdiction field is in position and the alien fleet is trapped in normal space." Webb pulled himself down to the command deck and strapped into his acceleration couch. Through the transparent aluminum viewport, he could see the rest of humanity's first strike force, nearly 1,000 ships spread across several light minutes of space, all converging on what intelligence indicated was a major Galactic Council supply depot. The target system contained 12 alien vessels, representing what the Council considered adequate protection for a rear-area logistics facility. Under normal circumstances, those 12 ships would have been more than sufficient to deal with any conceivable threat. Their energy weapons could disable most known warships within minutes, their shields could deflect anything short of a direct hit from a stellar collision, and their FTL capability meant they could call for reinforcements from anywhere in the galaxy. Unfortunately for them, they were about to discover that humans didn't believe in normal circumstances. "All ships, this is Admiral Hayes aboard the Retribution," crackled the fleet communication system. "Our FTL interdiction field is active and the alien vessels are confirmed trapped in normal space. Dr. Park's calculations indicate they won't be able to jump out for at least 6 hours." Webb could hear the satisfaction in Hayes' voice as she continued the briefing. "Intelligence reports that the alien commander has been broadcasting surrender demands for the past hour, threatening us with appropriate response from Council forces if we don't withdraw immediately. Apparently, they're having trouble understanding why we're not intimidated by their superior technology." Webb grinned as he checked his ship's weapons systems. The aliens were about to get a very educational lesson in human military psychology. "All ships, implement Swarm Protocol Alpha. I repeat, Swarm Protocol Alpha is now in effect. Show them what 1,000 disposable ships can accomplish when they're all piloted by humans who have something to prove." The attack began exactly as human tactical doctrine dictated, with overwhelming chaos applied at maximum velocity. Webb's ship was part of the first wave, 47 vessels that accelerated toward the alien formation at velocities that would have been considered suicidal by any rational military force. The Defiance's improvised engines pushed the ship to nearly 10% of light speed, turning it into what amounted to a guided missile with delusions of being a spacecraft. The alien response was immediate and predictable. Energy weapons lashed out from their formation, targeting the incoming human ships with the precision and efficiency that had made Council forces legendary throughout the galaxy. Beams that could disrupt molecular bonds at the quantum level struck human vessels with enough force to vaporize conventional armor. Instead of vaporizing, the human ships got angry. Webb watched his damage control displays with fascination as Dr. Tanaka's adaptive armor technology performed exactly as designed. The alien energy weapon struck the Defiance's hull and triggered a cascade reaction in the specially designed composite plating. Molecular bonds that had been deliberately destabilized reorganized themselves into crystalline structures that were orders of magnitude stronger than the original material. "This is incredible," reported Chief Engineer Rodriguez over the ship's internal communication system. "The alien weapons are actually reinforcing our armor. Each hit is making us tougher." "How much tougher?" Webb asked, watching as his ship's tactical display showed incoming energy beams striking his vessel with no apparent effect. "According to our sensors, we're currently about 40 times more durable than when we started this engagement. And the improvement is accelerating with each hit." Webb felt a savage grin spread across his face. The aliens were about to learn what happened when superior technology encountered human stubbornness backed by physics that refused to behave reasonably. The first wave of human ships reached the alien formation and did something that violated every principle of space combat that the Galactic Council had developed over 3 millennia of warfare. Instead of attempting to match the alien sophisticated energy weapons with equivalent technology, the human ships opened fire with devices that operated on the principle that hitting things really hard with big pieces of metal was a time-tested solution to most problems. Webb's plasma cannon had been designed for asteroid mining, specifically, for blasting through solid rock at temperatures that would melt most known materials. The targeting system had been adapted from industrial precision manufacturing equipment that could place components within microscopic tolerances. Together, they created a weapons system that was crude, inelegant, and absolutely devastating against enemies who had never encountered anyone insane enough to weaponize mining equipment. The plasma bolt that emerged from the Defiance's main gun was roughly the temperature of a small star's core and moved at a significant fraction of light speed. It struck the nearest alien vessel and did something that Council military engineers had thought was physically impossible. It punched through their energy shields as if they weren't there and converted approximately half of the enemy ship's hull into superheated vapor. The alien vessel didn't explode dramatically. It simply stopped existing in any meaningful sense, transformed from a sophisticated piece of technology into a rapidly expanding cloud of component atoms. "Direct hit," shouted Lieutenant Park from the tactical station. "Enemy vessel has been neutralized." Webb looked at his sensors, trying to process what had just happened. "Rodriguez, did we just destroy a ship that was supposedly invulnerable to primitive weapons?" "Yes, sir. Apparently, their shields are designed to deflect energy weapons and kinetic projectiles. Nobody ever told them they might need protection against controlled stellar fusion delivered at high velocity." The engagement continued for exactly 17 minutes and 34 seconds, which was precisely how long it took for humanity's first strike force to completely annihilate what had been considered an impregnable alien defensive position. When the shooting stopped, 12 alien vessels had been reduced to cosmic debris and nearly 1,000 human ships were still operational, though most of them now bore hull armor that was technically stronger than anything that had ever existed in galactic history. Webb found himself staring at his tactical displays in something approaching disbelief. According to every military manual he had ever read, the engagement should have resulted in humanity's forces being efficiently destroyed by technologically superior opponents. Instead, the aliens had been eliminated so quickly and thoroughly that several human ships had never gotten a chance to fire their weapons. "All ships, this is Admiral Hayes," came the fleet-wide transmission. "Excellent work, people. Phase 1 is complete and the supply depot is secured. Prepare for Phase 2 operations." Phase 2, Webb knew, was where things would get interesting. Having demonstrated that human forces could destroy alien ships, the next step was to capture alien technology intact for analysis and reverse engineering. It was a complex operation that required precision, timing, and the kind of aggressive creativity that humans specialized in. "Commander Webb," Hayes continued, "your flotilla is designated as the primary capture force. You have 90 minutes to secure the depot's data storage facilities and any intact alien technology before Council reinforcements can arrive." Webb looked at his chronometer and began calculating approach vectors. 90 minutes to board and secure an alien facility using tactics that had never been tested in combat, operated by humans who had been training for less than a month. It was exactly the kind of impossible deadline that brought out the best in human ingenuity. "All ships, this is Webb," he broadcast to his flotilla. "We're going aboard the depot to collect some souvenirs. Standard boarding protocol is in effect, with the following modifications: if you see alien technology that looks useful, grab it. If you see alien databases, download them. If you see aliens willing to surrender, accept their surrender and treat them according to the Geneva Conventions." He paused, thinking about the complexity of applying human military law to interstellar warfare. "And if anyone asks you whether the Geneva Conventions apply to alien prisoners, tell them that humans have never been particularly good at distinguishing between people and people from other planets when it comes to basic decency." The boarding operation that followed would later be studied in military academies throughout human space as an example of how to conduct amphibious operations in zero gravity against technologically superior opponents. It would also be remembered as the first time that human Marines encountered alien civilians in a non-combat situation. Webb led the first boarding team through the depot's main airlock, wearing armor that had been hastily adapted from deep space industrial suits and carrying weapons that had been designed for everything except fighting aliens in confined spaces. The depot's interior was a maze of corridors and chambers that had been designed according to aesthetic principles that made his head hurt just looking at them. The first alien they encountered was hiding in what appeared to be a storage bay, clutching what Webb's universal translator indicated were family photographs. She was roughly humanoid but composed of what looked like crystallized energy, and she was clearly terrified. "Please," the alien said, her voice coming through the translator with a musical quality that suggested her native language was based on harmonic frequencies. "I am not a combatant. I am a data curator. I surrender to your forces." Webb looked at the alien, the first living non-human he had ever seen, and felt the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. This was first contact between individual humans and aliens, taking place in the middle of humanity's first military victory in interstellar space. "Ma'am," he said, trying to keep his voice calm and professional, "you are under the protection of human forces. No harm will come to you as long as you cooperate with our security requirements." The alien's energy field flickered in what Webb hoped was relief. You are not going to execute me?" Webb felt a chill run down his spine. "Ma'am, humans don't execute prisoners. We're here to secure this facility and collect intelligence on Council military capabilities. If you're willing to help us understand your technology and provide information about Council operations, we'll ensure your safety and eventual repatriation to Council space." What followed was humanity's first diplomatic negotiation with an individual alien, conducted in a storage bay filled with what appeared to be crystallized memories while human marines secured the facility around them. The alien curator, who identified herself as Resonance of Crystal Clarity, proved to be a wealth of information about Council society, technology, and military organization. More importantly, she was the first alien to provide humans with an outside perspective on how the galaxy viewed humanity's sudden appearance. "Your species is causing great distress throughout Council space," she explained as Webb's technical team worked to interface human computer systems with alien data storage devices. "The speed of your technological development is unprecedented. Most species require centuries to develop interstellar capability. Humans achieved it in less than a century of spaceflight." "That doesn't seem like something to be afraid of," Webb replied, watching as his engineers successfully began downloading terabytes of alien technical specifications. "You do not understand," Resonance said, her energy field shifting to colors that the translator indicated meant urgency. "Technological development rate is directly correlated with social adaptability. Species that develop technology quickly also adapt their social structures, military doctrine, and cultural values quickly. The Council has achieved stability by ensuring that all member species develop at predictable, manageable rates." Webb felt pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. "You're saying that the Council is afraid of humans not because of our technology, but because we change too fast? Your species has reorganized your entire civilization 3 times since achieving interstellar flight," Resonance explained. "First for exploration, then for defense, now for warfare. Such adaptability is unsettling to species that have maintained stable societies for millennia." Webb looked around at his boarding party, humans who 3 weeks ago had been civilians and were now conducting military operations in alien space using tactics they had invented as they went along. "Resonance," he said carefully, "how does the Council typically deal with species that are too adaptable?" The alien's energy field shifted to what Webb's growing familiarity with her expressions told him was fear. "Such species are designated as evolutionary hazards and contained within their home systems until they achieve stability. If they cannot be contained." She didn't need to finish the sentence. Webb understood the implications perfectly. "How many species has the Council eliminated for being too adaptable?" 17, over the past 3,000 years. All were classified as existential threats to galactic stability. Webb felt the weight of that number settle on him. 17 entire civilizations, wiped out because they had the audacity to change and grow instead of accepting the role the Council had assigned to them. "Resonance," he said, "I need you to understand something about humans. We've been changing and adapting for our entire evolutionary history. Being told to stop adapting isn't just unacceptable, it's literally impossible for us." The alien's energy field flickered through several colors that the translator couldn't interpret before settling on what Webb had learned indicated deep thought. "Then, this conflict will not end with surrender or treaty," she said finally. "The Council cannot allow a species like yours to exist freely in the galaxy, and humans cannot accept the restrictions necessary for peaceful coexistence." Webb nodded grimly. "That's what we figured. Which is why we're not planning to fight this war according to anyone else's rules. The boarding operation concluded successfully, with Webb's team securing over a petabyte of alien technical data, several intact examples of Council technology, and, most importantly, detailed information about Council military organization and strategic doctrine. They also rescued 17 alien civilians who had been trapped in the depot during the attack and accepted the surrender of 8 Council military personnel who had survived the destruction of their ships. As Webb's flotilla prepared to return to human space with their intelligence hull, he found himself thinking about Resonance's final words to him before being transferred to one of the hospital ships for medical evaluation and eventual repatriation. "Commander Webb," she had said, "I have studied your species' history since achieving spaceflight. Your development pattern is unlike anything in Council records. I believe you may be the first species in galactic history to achieve technological advancement through controlled chaos rather than organized planning." Webb had asked her what she meant by that. Most species develop technology by building on previous achievements in logical progression. Humans appear to develop technology by breaking things until you understand how they work, then building something better from the pieces. This approach should result in catastrophic failure and civilizational collapse. But it hasn't, Webb had pointed out. No, Resonance had agreed, her energy field cycling through colors that indicated profound confusion. Instead, it has produced a species capable of developing effective countermeasures to technology thousands of years more advanced than their own in a matter of weeks. The Council has no precedent for such capability. As the human fleet jumped back to friendly space, Webb composed his after-action report for Admiral Hayes and Dr. Rodriguez. The mission had been a complete success by any measure: alien forces eliminated, intelligence gathered, prisoners taken according to human military law, and minimal casualties sustained. But, more importantly, they had proven that humanity's approach to interstellar warfare was not only viable but devastatingly effective. The Council's technological superiority meant nothing when faced with opponents who could adapt faster than the enemy could deploy countermeasures. Webb looked out at the stars as his ship transitioned into hyperspace, thinking about 17 dead civilizations that had been eliminated for the crime of refusing to stop changing. The Galactic Council had declared humanity an existential threat to galactic stability. They had no idea how right they were. Humanity wasn't just going to win this war, they were going to transform the very nature of galactic civilization in the process. The Council's 3,000 years of stable, specialized perfection was about to encounter 8 billion humans who had never learned how to stop evolving. Webb suspected that when the dust settled, the galaxy would be a very different place. And he was looking forward to finding out exactly how different humans could make it. Supreme Council member Thelmara had lived for over 400 years, serving the Galactic Council for 3 centuries, and had never experienced anything approaching the crisis currently consuming her every waking moment. The crystalline chamber that housed the Council's emergency session hummed with frequencies of distress that would have been literally painful to human ears, as 47 different species attempted to comprehend the impossible reality of their situation. In the 3 months since humanity had rejected the Council's ultimatum, the galaxy had descended into something that defied every precedent in recorded history. Not merely war, the Council had dealt with military conflicts before. What was unfolding was something far more terrifying: systematic dissolution of the fundamental assumptions that had governed galactic civilization for 3 millennia. The latest reports, transmitted Fleet Admiral Corvin of the Zekai battle fleets, his biomechanical voice carrying harmonics of barely controlled panic, indicate that human forces have eliminated 17 more of our supply depots, captured 4 major shipyard facilities, and successfully defended 6 systems against our counterattacks. Their casualty rates remain negligible despite facing forces with superior numbers and technology. Thelmara's photosynthetic skin shifted to colors that indicated deep concern. How is this possible? Our weapons were designed to penetrate any known defensive system. That is the problem, replied Dr. Vashta, the Council's chief military analyst. Human defensive systems are not known systems. They violate established principles of defensive technology so fundamentally that our weapons cannot interface with them properly. The explanation that followed made Thelmara's cellular structure ache with confusion. Human ships, it seemed, had abandoned energy shielding entirely in favor of what could only be described as aggressive armor that became stronger when attacked. Human weapons operated on principles so primitive that sophisticated alien defensive systems had no protocols for dealing with them. Human tactics involved deliberate waste of resources on a scale that no rational military force would consider acceptable. Most disturbing of all, humans appeared to be evolving their capabilities in real time during active combat operations. "Show me the comparative analysis," Thalnara requested, her botanical consciousness focusing on the holographic displays that materialized in the chamber's center. The data was terrifying. In 12 weeks of warfare, human technology had advanced at a rate that typically required decades of peaceful research. Their ship designs had evolved through 7 major iterations, each one incorporating lessons learned from the previous generation. Their weapons had grown from improvised mining tools to devices that could penetrate council shields that had been considered impregnable for centuries. "This is the UES Retribution, humanity's flagship," Dr. Vashta indicated, highlighting a massive vessel that appeared to have been constructed from the remains of several different spacecraft. When first encountered, it was a crude collection of salvaged components held together by primitive welding techniques. The display shifted to show recent intelligence images of the same vessel. "This is the Retribution as of 6 days ago. It has been upgraded, modified, and enhanced continuously throughout the conflict. Human engineering teams have rebuilt the ship 17 times while it remained in active combat status. It now mounts weapons and defensive systems that incorporate captured council technology integrated with human manufacturing techniques in ways that our scientists consider theoretically impossible." Thalnara studied the images with growing unease. The Retribution had evolved from a crude warship into something that looked like it had been designed by engineers who regarded physics as a set of suggestions rather than laws. "What are their current capabilities?" she asked. "Unknown," admitted Fleet Admiral Corvin. "Human capabilities change too rapidly for our intelligence services to track accurately. By the time we develop countermeasures for their current technology, they have already deployed next-generation systems that operate on completely different principles." The admission sent waves of distress through the assembled council members. For 3,000 years, the council's military superiority had been based on their ability to analyze and counter enemy capabilities through superior technology and scientific understanding. Facing an enemy that evolved faster than they could analyze was outside their conceptual framework for warfare. Supreme Council member Thalnara transmitted Harmony Eternal Peace, representative of the energy-based Lumtai Collective. "We must address the psychological reports from our military forces. Our pilots and ship commanders are experiencing unprecedented levels of stress when engaging human vessels." "Explain," Thalnara requested, though she suspected she already understood the problem. "Human military doctrine violates every principle of civilized warfare," Harmony Eternal Peace continued. "They deploy forces in patterns that appear suicidal, then accomplish objectives through methods that should result in catastrophic failure. Our military personnel are trained to respond to logical, predictable enemy actions. Human actions are neither logical nor predictable." Dr. Vashta activated another display, showing tactical recordings from recent engagements. "This is the Battle of Kepler 442, where a council fleet of 37 ships engaged a human force of 200 vessels. Observe their approach patterns." Thalnara watched in fascination and horror as human ships scattered across the battlespace in what appeared to be complete chaos. There was no formation, no coordinated strategy, no apparent command structure. Individual human vessels seemed to be operating according to their own tactical plans, resulting in a swirling mass of completely unpredictable movement. "Our tactical computers could not generate targeting solutions because they could not predict where human ships would be from one moment to the next," Dr. Vashta explained. "Our fleet commanders reported that it was like fighting a force composed entirely of wild animals." The recording continued as human ships began their attack runs. Instead of coordinated strikes against specific targets, each human vessel seemed to choose its own approach vector and attack method. Some ships fired kinetic projectiles from extreme range. Others closed to point-blank distance and released weapons that appeared to be nuclear explosives. Several human vessels actually rammed council ships, using their adaptive armor to survive impacts that destroyed both vessels. "This engagement lasted 47 minutes, Dr. Vashta noted. The human force achieved complete tactical victory despite sustaining 60% casualties. Our fleet was eliminated entirely." Thalnara felt her cellular structure process the implications. The humans had won by accepting casualty rates that would have been considered catastrophic defeat by council standards. They treated their own ships and crews as expendable resources to be traded for tactical advantage. Are we certain these beings are actually intelligent? Asked Resonance of Perfect Logic, representing the mathematical Cretae species. Their behavior suggests either primitive instinct or some form of collective mental illness. Before anyone could respond, the chamber's communication systems activated with an incoming transmission that carried the highest priority encryption codes. Admiral Hayes's image materialized in the center of the chamber, her human features resolving into an expression that Thelnara's xenopsychology training identified as grimly determined. Supreme Council of the Galactic Federation, Hayes began, her translated voice carrying undertones that seemed to bypass conscious thought and speak directly to predator avoidance instincts that most Council species had evolved beyond millennia ago. I am Admiral Sarah Hayes, Supreme Commander of the United Earth Defense Fleet. The chamber fell silent as 47 different species focused on humanity's military leader. I am contacting you today to propose a modification to the current conflict parameters. As you are undoubtedly aware, the past 3 months have demonstrated that this war will not conclude with humanity's defeat or withdrawal. Your forces cannot contain our expansion, and our capabilities continue to evolve at rates that exceed your ability to develop countermeasures. Thelnara noticed that Hayes wasn't boasting or threatening, she was simply stating facts with the calm certainty of someone reporting weather conditions. However, Hayes continued escalation of this conflict serves neither our interests nor yours. You have classified us as an existential threat to galactic stability. That classification is accurate, but incomplete. The Admiral paused, allowing the implications to settle. Humanity is not seeking to destroy galactic civilization. We are seeking to transform it. The Council's current structure, based on specialized species fulfilling predetermined roles in a static hierarchy, is incompatible with human psychology and social organization. We cannot and will not accept permanent containment to our home system. Dr. Vashta began transmitting rapid queries to the chamber's analysis systems, trying to determine whether Hayes was offering terms for negotiated settlement or delivering an ultimatum. Therefore, Hayes continued, I am authorized to offer the following proposal. Humanity will accept integration into galactic civilization under the following conditions. First, recognition of human sovereignty over all systems currently under our control. Second, establishment of human colonies and exploration rights throughout previously unclaimed galactic territories. Third, technological exchange programs between human institutions and willing council members. Thelnara felt a wave of relief begin to spread through her consciousness. Perhaps the humans were more reasonable than their military actions suggested. In exchange, Hayes said, humanity will provide the council with something you have lacked for 3,000 years: innovation pressure. The relief evaporated instantly, replaced by confusion and growing dread. Our analysis of council society indicates that your technological and social development has stagnated due to overspecialization and risk aversion. Your species have achieved perfection within narrow parameters, but have lost the ability to adapt to fundamental changes. This makes your civilization extremely vulnerable to any disruption of established patterns. Hayes's expression shifted to what Thelnara recognized as a predatory smile. Humanity specializes in disruption. We will serve as a permanent source of chaos, innovation, and adaptive pressure that will prevent galactic civilization from ossifying into permanent stagnation. Your species will be forced to evolve, adapt, and improve in order to remain competitive with human capabilities. Thelnara's photosynthetic patches began cycling through colors of alarm as she understood what Hayes was proposing. The humans weren't offering to integrate peacefully into council society, they were offering to transform that society into something dynamic, unpredictable, and constantly changing. The alternative, Hayes continued, is continued warfare until one side achieves decisive victory. Our projections indicate that such a conflict would result in the destruction of current galactic civilization regardless of the outcome. If we win, council society collapses due to technological and social disruption. If you win, you eliminate the only species in the galaxy capable of forcing continued evolution and adaptation. The Admiral's image flickered as she prepared to end the transmission. You have 72 hours to consider our proposal. If the Council rejects these terms, humanity will implement what we call the Prometheus Protocol, systematic disruption of galactic civilization through technological, social, and economic innovation deployed at rates that exceed your ability to adapt. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. "What?" asked Harmony Eternal Peace after several minutes of shocked quiet. "Is the Prometheus Protocol?" Dr. Vashta activated his analysis systems and began correlating intelligence reports from human space. What emerged was a picture of human society that made Felnara's botanical consciousness recoil in horror. Based on intercepts of human communications and analysis of their recent technological developments, the Prometheus Protocol appears to be a comprehensive plan for accelerated galactic evolution, he reported. They intend to introduce innovations in technology, social organization, economic systems, and military doctrine at rates that will force all other species to either adapt or become obsolete. The holographic displays showed projections of human expansion patterns, technological development curves, and social evolution models. Their plan is to turn the entire galaxy into an environment where continuous change is necessary for survival. They will create permanent evolutionary pressure that makes stagnation impossible. Fleet Admiral Corbin's biomechanical systems emitted sounds that indicated extreme distress. They want to turn the galaxy into their homeworld, a place where everything changes constantly and only the most adaptable survive. Felnara studied the projections with growing comprehension. Humanity hadn't accidentally become dangerous, they had evolved in an environment so hostile that only the most aggressively adaptable traits could survive. Now they wanted to recreate those conditions on a galactic scale. If we accept their terms, she said slowly, galactic civilization becomes permanently unstable, constantly evolving, never achieving the peaceful stagnation that has characterized our society for millennia. And, if we reject their terms, Dr. Vashta added, they implement their plan anyway, but as enemies rather than partners. Supreme Council member Felnara looked around the chamber at representatives of 47 species that had achieved peace and stability through careful specialization and risk aversion. None of them had evolved in environments that required constant adaptation. None of them were psychologically equipped for permanent change and uncertainty. "How," she asked, "did we manage to encounter the one species in the galaxy that considers our greatest achievement, peaceful stability, to be a form of living death?" The question hung in the chamber's atmosphere like a toxin. For 3,000 years, the Council had worked to eliminate uncertainty, reduce risk, and create a galaxy where every species could pursue perfection within their chosen specialization. They had achieved their goal and created a utopia of ordered progress and predictable development. Now they faced a species that viewed their utopia as a stagnant nightmare and was willing to tear it down in order to force continued evolution. "We need time to analyze their proposal," Felnara announced finally. "Dr. Vashta, I want complete projections for both acceptance and rejection scenarios." Fleet Admiral Corvin, prepare contingency plans for continued warfare. All council members are to consult with their respective governments and report back within 60 hours. As the emergency session dispersed, Felnara remained in the chamber, studying the tactical displays that showed human expansion across the galaxy. In 3 months, they had gone from a single system to controlling 17 star systems and establishing colonies in dozens more. Their technology had evolved from primitive fusion rockets to FTL vessels that incorporated principles stolen from Council technology and improved through human engineering methods. Most terrifying of all, their rate of development was accelerating. Dr. Vashta's projections indicated that if current trends continued, humanity would achieve technological parity with the most advanced Council species within 2 years. Within 5 years, they would be the dominant military force in the galaxy. Within 10 years, they would possess capabilities that exceeded anything in recorded galactic history. Unless, of course, other species were forced to evolve in response to human pressure. Felnara's botanical consciousness processed the irony of their situation. The Council had 3 choices: accept humanity's terms and transform galactic civilization into something dynamic and unpredictable, reject their terms and face inevitable military defeat, or somehow find a way to contain or eliminate a species that had proven capable of adapting to any challenge faster than countermeasures could be developed. She suspected there was a 4th option that nobody wanted to discuss, the possibility that humanity was right about the dangers of stagnation, and that galactic civilization needed the kind of aggressive innovation pressure that only they could provide. As Felnara prepared to transmit her preliminary report to the Council leadership, she found herself wondering whether the humans had discovered something fundamental about the nature of intelligence and civilization that the rest of the galaxy had forgotten, that the price of perfect stability was the death of growth, and that sometimes the most dangerous enemy was the one that forced you to become better than you thought possible. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station, watching the impossible sight of human and alien engineering teams working together to construct humanity's first joint interstellar research facility. The station itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering, human structural frameworks supporting alien energy manipulation systems, with computer networks that somehow managed to interface technologies that operated on completely incompatible principles. 6 months had passed since the Council's historic decision to accept humanity's integration proposal, and the galaxy was already transforming in ways that nobody could have predicted. The vote had been close, 24 species in favor, 22 opposed, and 1 abstention, but it had been enough to fundamentally alter the trajectory of galactic civilization. Rodriguez had been appointed as the first Human Council liaison for technological integration, a position that required her to somehow coordinate research efforts between species that approached science from completely different philosophical foundations. It was the kind of impossible job that humans excel at, which was probably why the Council had insisted that only a human could fill it. Dr. Rodriguez called out Dr. Yixtal, her Zorhai counterpart, as he flowed across the station's transparent aluminum floor in a pattern of crystalline beauty that still made her head hurt to watch. The energy conversion efficiency tests have exceeded our theoretical maximums again. Human engineering continues to violate our understanding of physical limitations. Rodriguez grinned as she reviewed the latest results. The joint research project had been designed to develop more efficient FTL drive systems by combining alien energy manipulation with human manufacturing techniques. The results were spectacular in ways that neither side had anticipated. Yixtal, I think the problem is that humans never learned about theoretical maximums, she replied, watching as the test data showed power output levels that should have been impossible according to alien science. We tend to approach engineering problems by asking what do we need this to do, rather than what are the limitations we need to work within. The Zor.